New Jersey may seem calm, but beneath its streets lurk some of the state's darkest crimes, committed by killers hidden in plain sight. Lovers executed after parties, children scarred by violence at home, tourists slaughtered in broad daylight, each courtroom echoed with life sentences, some with death row, as families mourned futures stolen forever. These murders left scars not just on victims' loved ones, but on entire communities, proof that ordinary lives can mask extraordinary brutality. And this is Inside New Jersey's Darkest Black Killers, full list and shocking true crime cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Latonia Bellamy. A couple returned from their engagement party, carrying gifts and dreams of a shared future. Minutes later, on a Jersey City street, gunfire ended it all. The perpetrator was Latonia Bellamy, just 19 at the time, alongside her cousin Shaquan Bellamy and accomplice Darmelia Lawrence. Latonia, later described by a judge as capable of extreme violence, claimed she feared her cousin, yet her role in the killings was undeniable. The victims, Michael Mucciocchi, 27, and Nia Hack, 25, had no connection to their attackers. Their lives were stolen in what prosecutors called a thrill killing. Surveillance and testimony showed the three walking with weapons when they encountered the couple unloading gifts from their car after their engagement party. Shaquan forced them to the ground and shot Michael in the head with a shotgun. Latonia was found guilty of firing the bullet that killed Nia with a pistol. The killers tried to carjack the couple's vehicle, but failed because of a steering lock. Instead, they took gift cards, phones, a ring, and $40. It was a robbery that became one of Hudson County's most cold-blooded homicides. Within days, Latonia and her accomplices were arrested. At trial in 2012, she insisted she never shot anyone, telling jurors, "I was lying then," about her earlier police confession. Her mother also claimed she was innocent, blaming Shaquan. But the jury needed less than a day to convict her of murder, felony murder, robbery, carjacking, and weapons offenses. In February 2013, Latonia, 22, stood in Hudson County Superior Court as the judge sentenced her to life plus 30 years, parole only after 93 years. Defiant, she listened as the court labeled her crime an act of pure viciousness. Family members of the victims wept in the gallery. Sandra Mucciocchi, Michael's mother, told the court, "My heart has been ripped out." Nia's uncle added, "Hundreds, thousands of people's lives have changed because of her actions." Years later, her case returned on appeal. In 2021, the appellate court affirmed her convictions but remanded her sentence for reconsideration. At resentencing in 2024, her defense presented records of childhood trauma and argued that youth diminished culpability. The court acknowledged the evidence, but reduced her punishment only slightly, 70 years with 64 to be served before parole eligibility. She will likely remain behind bars for life, despite earning a degree and advocating for other inmates while incarcerated. The community called the crime execution style and one of the most depraved killings in county history. It rattled New Jersey and echoed nationally as another example of senseless violence destroying promising lives. From this tragedy emerged critical lessons. Random acts of violence can strike anyone, anywhere. Never underestimate the danger of armed strangers on isolated streets. And ignoring signs of coercion or peer pressure can lead to catastrophic outcomes. Vigilance, awareness, and refusal to normalize violence are essential protections. In the end, 2 young lives meant for marriage were buried side by side, a haunting reminder that one night of reckless cruelty can shatter generations. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2, Everton Thomas, Sherrie Parker, and Deshawn Thomas. In Camden, New Jersey, a quiet June morning would unravel into one of the city's most unsettling mysteries, where friendship ended not in betrayal alone, but in irreversible violence. The accused are Everton Thomas, his wife Sherrie Parker, and their son Deshawn Thomas. At the time of their arrest, in September 2025, Everton and Sherrie were 41 years old, while Deshawn was just 22. Their victim, Harold Hal Miller Jr., was 48 and had known Everton as a friend. That connection drew him into the home, where his life would abruptly end. On June 12, 2025, Miller was last seen entering the residence on Baird Boulevard. Surveillance captured him arriving shortly before 11:30 a.m., but no footage ever showed him leaving. Moments later, a gunshot echoed. Investigators believe this was the moment Miller was killed. Later that day, cameras recorded Everton moving Miller's vehicle to Pennsauken, leaving the victim's phone inside. What followed revealed brutality beyond the single shot. Sherrie and Deshawn allegedly purchased a chainsaw, containers, trash bags, and cleaning supplies. Witnesses described being barred from the basement, hearing power tools, smelling decomposition, and overhearing Sherrie declare, "A wife gotta do what she gotta do. I'm not giving up my husband." Another chilling detail came from a witness who said Deshawn admitted his father woke him and asked for help to chop up a body. In the days that followed, Everton and Deshawn were reportedly seen discarding heavy containers at a nearby apartment complex dumpster. By June 14, Miller's family reported him missing. His car was discovered abandoned, his phone lifeless inside. When investigators searched the home on June 20, they found suspected bloodstains and a firearm loaded with 9 rounds. DNA testing later confirmed the blood belonged to Miller. Still, Everton was questioned and released, only to flee to Canada the very next day. For weeks, the case seemed stalled, until September 5, 2025, when the Camden County Prosecutor's Office filed charges. Everton was indicted for first-degree murder, desecration of human remains, and tampering with evidence. Sherrie and Deshawn were charged with desecration and tampering. 3 days later, U.S. Marshals arrested Sherrie and Deshawn in Camden, while Everton was captured at the port of Buffalo after crossing from Canada. In custody, each appeared subdued. Sherrie avoided eye contact, Deshawn kept his head bowed, and Everton stood silent as prosecutors read the charges. Community shock deepened as details emerged, especially the alleged dismemberment and disposal of Miller's remains. His body has never been recovered. Authorities called it a crime of staggering cruelty. Internationally, the case drew attention because of Everton's flight across the Canadian border, underscoring how far suspects may go to avoid prosecution. From this tragedy, hard lessons emerge. First, never underestimate red flags in personal relationships, even with trusted friends. Second, sudden disappearances must be treated with urgency because every lost hour can erase evidence. Third, when witnesses observe disturbing behavior, silence can enable further destruction. These lessons, if heeded, can prevent future tragedies. What remains is a haunting truth. When loyalty mutates into violence and silence masks the truth, the cost is always measured in human life. Number 3. Ambrose Harris. Under the winter skies of December 1992, a promising young artist drove to Trenton, New Jersey, never imagining her path would cross with one of the state's most violent men. Ambrose Harris had spent much of his life in and out of prison for robbery and burglary. Known as a serial rapist and kidnapper, he was just 40 years old when freedom gave him the chance to commit another crime. Days after serving 13 years behind bars, he targeted 22-year-old Kristen Huggins, a stranger to him but the victim of his decision to carjack. On the morning of December 17, Huggins left her Bucks County home to paint a mural. Harris spotted her and declared, "I'm going to get that bitch." With accomplice Gloria Dunn, he forced her into the trunk of her red Toyota. Hours later, beneath the bridge, he raped her, shot her twice in the head, and concealed her body beneath a mattress. He returned with a shovel, shot her again in the face to ensure her death, and buried her in a shallow grave. An autopsy later revealed dirt in her lungs, raising the horrific possibility that she was buried alive. Her disappearance prompted a desperate search. Her abandoned car was found stripped and damaged. Witnesses came forward, including teenagers who said their uncle had boasted of killing a girl. By February 1993, Gloria Dunn confessed and led detectives to Huggins' decomposed body after 61 days underground. In court, Harris displayed open contempt, spitting on the floor, mocking the judge, and taunting the victim's parents. Prosecutors secured convictions for kidnapping, rape, and murder. On March 2, 1996, Harris was sentenced to death, his demeanor defiant as he laughed and gestured obscenely while the judge read the sentence. The New Jersey Supreme Court upheld the verdict in 2007, but before execution could occur, the state abolished the death penalty, commuting his sentence to life without parole. While on death row in 1999, Harris killed fellow inmate Robert "Mudman" Simon during a confrontation. A guard testified that Simon charged Harris, who responded by slamming him down and stomping his face until he died. Harris was acquitted in 2001 on grounds of self-defense. The community was shaken for years. Kristen's parents, James and Karen Huggins, described knowing there was trouble the moment she failed to return home. Retired Deputy Police Chief Joe Constance later said of Harris's death in 2020, "At least maybe this gives some justice to the family. Maybe they can sleep better." From this tragedy come 3 stark lessons. Predators often hide in plain sight, even freshly released from prison. The smallest decisions, accepting a ride, parking in the wrong place, can become life-threatening. And ignoring patterns of violent behavior allows cycles of destruction to continue unchecked. Ambrose Harris's story is a chilling reminder that justice can delay, but never erase brutality. In the end, his name became a symbol not of freedom, but of the irreversible cost of violence. Number 4. Nakira M. Griner, a missing toddler, a frantic call to police, and a stroller abandoned on a city street. What looked like a kidnapping would unravel into one of New Jersey's darkest crimes. The perpetrator was Nakira M. Griner, a 24-year-old mother from Bridgeton, New Jersey. On the evening of February 8, 2019, she reported her 23-month-old son, Daniel Griner Jr., missing. She claimed a stranger had attacked her and snatched the boy while she was walking to a store with Daniel in a stroller and her infant strapped to her chest. Within hours, city and state police launched a full search with bloodhounds. The stroller was found abandoned nearby, holding only a pair of tiny red sneakers. By dawn, the story had collapsed. At 3 a.m. on February 9, investigators discovered Daniel's remains under a shed behind Griner's home. His body was burned, dismembered, and hidden in trash bags. Detectives noted the smell of smoke and found fans running inside the house. Griner's narrative shifted repeatedly. She said Daniel had fallen down the stairs. She said she had left him alive in the stroller because no one would believe her. After failing a polygraph, she admitted she struck him because he would not eat nor listen to her. The medical examiner's findings told the full truth. Daniel suffered blunt force trauma, multiple fractures and bruises to his face. His body was mutilated with fire and blades after death. Prosecutors charged Griner with murder, desecration of human remains, tampering with evidence, endangering the welfare of a child, and filing a false public alarm. At trial, Griner's defense pointed to postpartum psychosis and argued she suffered a mental break. They claimed the death was unintentional, though she confessed to destroying the remains. They also tried to shift suspicion toward Daniel's father, who had admitted to disciplinary strikes days earlier. Investigators cleared him. Time cards showed he was at work during the boy's death. In January 2023, after 2 weeks of testimony, a Cumberland County jury found Griner guilty on all major charges. The sentencing came weeks later. Standing before the court in a beige jumpsuit, her hair pulled back tightly, Griner showed little visible emotion. The judge imposed life in prison without the possibility of parole, the maximum penalty available in New Jersey since the abolition of the death penalty. On death row, rather than sending her to death penalty, the community response was one of disbelief. Bridgeton's mayor called it a tragedy that left everyone shaking their head. Neighbors described her as once genuine and kind, now impossible to reconcile with the brutality exposed in court. From this case come lessons too urgent to ignore. First, never dismiss repeated signs of abuse or unexplained injuries in children. Intervention may save a life. Second, fabricated abduction stories often mask deeper violence. Investigators and families must look beyond the surface. Third, mental health crises, if left unaddressed, can escalate into catastrophic harm. Daniel's short life is a painful reminder that trust can be broken where it should be safest, and when innocence is silenced, a community must ask, could warning signs have been heard sooner? Number 5. Nathaniel Harvey. A young woman vanishes from her home, another is found beaten to death in her apartment, and for decades the truth remained buried beneath failed trials and unanswered questions. The perpetrator was Nathaniel Harvey, born in Camden, New Jersey in 1950. Later known as one of the state's most violent serial rapists and killers. His criminal record stretched back years, from burglary and robbery convictions to brutal sexual assaults. Prosecutors said his pattern was chillingly consistent. He entered unlocked homes, held women captive, and raped them. Records showed his IQ at just 66, yet his capacity for violence left communities across Middlesex County terrified. On February 26, 1984, 19-year-old Donna Macho disappeared from her East Windsor home. Her car was abandoned near a sewer plant, semen found in her bedroom. Harvey, living nearby, was identified early, but the case went cold. 11 years later, Boy Scouts discovered her skeletal remains in a wooded area. Less than 2 years after Macho's disappearance, on June 17, 1985, 37-year-old Irene Schnaps, a widow, was found dead in her Plainsboro apartment. She had been raped and bludgeoned with a hammer-like object. 15 blows shattered her skull, knocked out teeth, and left her bedroom soaked in blood. A sneaker print and stolen jewelry linked Harvey to the scene. That same year, Harvey was arrested for attempting to kidnap a 13-year-old girl. In his car, investigators recovered a stolen Seiko watch belonging to Schnaps. After 3 days of interrogation, police reported that Harvey confessed to her murder, though the confession was never recorded. In 1986, he was convicted and sentenced to death, but the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the conviction, ruling his rights had been violated. A retrial in 1994 again resulted in a conviction and another death sentence, upheld by the state Supreme Court. Yet doubts persisted. Defense attorneys pointed to flawed DNA testing and withheld evidence, including a failed polygraph of an alternative suspect. In 2015, an appeals court granted him a third trial, but Harvey died in 2020 at age 70 while still awaiting it. Meanwhile, advances in forensic science finally solved the earlier mystery. In April 2023, modern DNA conclusively tied Harvey to the murder of Donna Macho, ending decades of speculation. "I feel he got away with it," said her sister. Though she expressed relief the case was closed, public reaction was marked by frustration at the justice system's failures. Schnapp's family endured decades of legal reversals. The Macho family spoke of hiring private investigators, trackers, even psychics, during the long years of uncertainty. From this tangled history come clear warnings. First, forensic evidence must always be tested with rigor. Errors can derail justice for decades. Second, predators often exploit unlocked homes. Securing one's environment can deter opportunistic attacks. Third, law enforcement must disclose all evidence. Concealment erodes trust and prolongs family suffering. Heart-stopping Emmanuel Fantasy Books, Prose. Nathaniel Harvey's legacy is not only the brutality of his crimes, but also the flaws his trials exposed. Justice delayed is justice wounded, and every reversal reminds us how fragile truth can be. Number 6. Antoinette Pelzer. Two tourists walked along a sunny street in Atlantic City. Within seconds, their trip would end in unimaginable violence, leaving an entire community in shock and grief. The perpetrator was Antoinette Pelzer, a 44-year-old woman from Philadelphia who suffered from untreated paranoid schizophrenia. Diagnosed 2 decades earlier, she drifted between shelters and train stations, often disconnected from reality. Her family said she was funny and clean on medication, but a different person when off it, hearing voices and spiraling into paranoia. Despite her illness, she had no prior criminal record, but on May 21, 2012, her instability turned lethal. That morning, Pel Lin Wan, 80, and her daughter Alice May C. Leung, 47, Canadian visitors from Ontario, were walking down Pacific Avenue after enjoying their trip. Pelzer approached, armed with a 13-inch butcher knife. She attempted to steal Leung's purse, but when Leung resisted, Pelzer began stabbing her with shocking ferocity. Wan rushed to protect her daughter, and Pelzer turned the blade on her as well. The assault lasted just 13 seconds, but it was merciless. Surveillance cameras captured the scene as Pelzer's knife struck repeatedly. An Atlantic City police officer on patrol witnessed the attack, drew his firearm, and subdued her. Both victims were rushed to a nearby hospital only a half-block away, but neither survived. Pelzer was arrested immediately. At her first court appearance, she laughed, frowned, and appeared confused about the charges, even expressing surprise that both women had died. Her bail was set at $1.5 million. Initially pleading not guilty, she underwent psychiatric evaluations. Reports showed she denied robbery as her motive, yet 2 psychological tests confirmed she knew right from wrong. By August 2013, Pelzer entered a guilty plea to 2 counts of first-degree murder. In October, the judge sentenced her to 2 consecutive 40-year prison terms, 80 years in total. She must serve at least 68 years before parole, making release unlikely within her lifetime. During sentencing, she offered her first apology, saying, "I was real sick back then at the time. I apologize to the people that I have killed." The victim's family expressed devastation. Ophelia Leung, a relative, told the court, "We were such a happy family, and now this family is gone. There is no more happiness." A grandson described Juan as the most loving person I ever knew, and wished for one more chance to thank her. They presented 2 books documenting the lives of the women, a poignant reminder of what was stolen. The killings shook Atlantic City, damaging the city's efforts to rebuild its image as a safe tourist hub. Prosecutor Ted Housel emphasized, this could have happened anywhere, but residents and officials could not ignore the crime's symbolic weight. From this tragedy, stark lessons emerge. Untreated mental illness can escalate into public danger. Resisting armed robbers often increases risk, and awareness of surroundings remains vital, even in broad daylight. The Pelzer case reminds us that safety is fragile. A single moment of violence can shatter lives, families, and communities forever. Number 7. Joseph Harris. A man in black combat gear walked into the Knife of New Jersey, armed with guns, grenades, and a sword. By dawn, 4 people were dead, and America had a new phrase: going postal. The perpetrator was Joseph Harris, a former U.S. postal worker born in prison in 1956. His life was marked by psychiatric problems and disturbing behavior. Co-workers called him odd and a walking time bomb. He practiced martial arts on mail bags, stockpiled weapons, and nurtured a growing hatred toward the Postal Service after being fired in April 1990. Harris fixated on revenge, preparing for nearly 2 years. His first target was Roy Edwards, a broker who had lost him $10,000. Dressed in a ninja outfit, Harris stormed Edwards' Montville home, handcuffed his family, sexually assaulted his wife and 2 daughters, then executed Edwards with a gunshot. Police never connected him to the crime until later. In October 1991, Harris wrote a 2-page letter detailing his grudge against the Postal Service and vowing revenge. He dressed in fatigues, a bulletproof vest, and a gas mask, booby-trapped his apartment, and armed himself with an Uzi, a silenced machine gun, grenades, and a samurai sword. That night, he went first to Wayne, New Jersey, where his former supervisor, Carol Ott, lived. She had played a key role in his dismissal and had once ordered him to undergo a psychological exam, which he refused. Harris shot Ott's fiancé, Cornelius Caston Jr., execution-style behind the ear as he watched television. Then he crept upstairs and slashed Carol Ott with the samurai sword as she lay in bed. Hours later, Harris drove to the Ridgewood Post Office, his old workplace. Around 2 a.m., he opened fire, killing 2 mail handlers, Joseph Vanderpaul, 59, and Donald McNaught, 63. He fired at a truck driver who managed to escape and alert police. When officers arrived, Harris hurled an explosive device, sparking a tense standoff. Surrounded by SWAT, Harris finally surrendered after hours of negotiation, heavily armed, and wearing his black ninja hood. In 1992, Harris was convicted of the Montville and Ridgewood murders. He was sentenced to death, a rare outcome in New Jersey courts. In the courtroom, he appeared defiant, calm, and detached, embodying the phrase that his crimes etched into American culture. He died of natural causes on death row in 1996, before any execution date was set. The murders horrified the public. At the Ridgewood Post Office, a sign thanked patrons for condolences and pleaded, "Please, do not ask questions." The rampage was one of 11 postal massacres between 1983 and 1993, cementing workplace violence as a national crisis. From this case, vital lessons stand out. Untreated mental illness can evolve into lethal obsession. Ignoring explicit threats, like Harris's vow of revenge, invites tragedy. And securing workplaces against insider threats is critical for safety. Joseph Harris left behind more than victims. He left a phrase that America still knows: going postal, a reminder of how unchecked rage can redefine an entire culture. Number 8. Nadiyah Venable. A knock at the door on a quiet Newark afternoon set in motion a scene of unimaginable violence, leaving children scarred forever by what they witnessed inside their own home. Nadiyah Venable, a young woman from Irvington, New Jersey, was 20 years old and 6 months pregnant when she confronted her romantic rival, 29-year-old Sharon Mowens. Venable was the former girlfriend of Kenny Jones, father of her unborn child, who had decided to leave her and reconcile with Mowens, the mother of his 2 other children. Fueled by anger and jealousy, Venable enlisted the help of her 15-year-old cousin, Nadiyah Venable, to confront Mowens at her home on May 15, 2010. When Mowens' 10-year-old daughter answered the door, she recognized Venable immediately. Moments later, bleach hidden in a spice bottle was splashed into Mowens' eyes, blinding her and also burning the young girl's skin. As Mowens collapsed backward, she cried out, "No, stop, I have 3 kids." Venable began striking her, and a kitchen knife was taken up. Mowens was stabbed 30 times in a brutal frenzy while her 2 sons, just 3 and 6 years old, tried desperately to clean blood from their mother's body with towels. Police would later recall the heartbreaking sight of the children's small feet stained red with their mother's blood. The 10-year-old daughter, still stinging from bleach, ran into the street and sought help, alerting authorities. Mowens was pronounced dead at University Hospital less than an hour later. Nadiyah Venable was arrested the same day, and within days she admitted to police that she and her cousin went to the apartment intending to rough up Mowens. At trial in 2013, Venable attempted to shift blame onto her cousin, but Nadiyah testified against her, confirming that Nadiyah had wielded the knife. After a 3-week trial, an Essex County jury deliberated for only 2 hours before finding her guilty of murder, burglary, conspiracy, felony murder, and weapons charges. On September 27, 2013, Judge Sherrie Hutchins Henderson sentenced Venable to 55 years in prison, requiring 47 years before parole eligibility. Observers noted her lack of visible reaction as the sentence was handed down. The victim's family expressed both relief and sorrow. Sharon's sister, Felicia Mowens, said, "It's not going to bring my sister back, but I'm just happy to get justice for her and her kids." Assistant Prosecutor Purva Deshpande emphasized that nothing can erase what those children witnessed. To this day, the case serves as a grim reminder of choices made in moments of rage. The lessons are painfully clear. Jealousy can escalate into irreversible violence. Conflicts should never be resolved with confrontation. And children exposed to domestic disputes endure lifelong trauma. Nadiyah Venable died suddenly in prison in 2014 at the age of 23, less than a year into her sentence. Her family questioned the official account, raising concerns about prison safety. Tragedy multiplies when anger is allowed to dictate action. Justice may punish the guilty, but it can never restore the innocence lost by children who saw everything. Number 9. Jerome Dennis. In the early 1990s, as Newark's urban landscape hummed with daily life, an unseen predator began stalking its streets, turning routine walks into potential nightmares and sparking whispers of a lurking danger that no one could ignore. Jerome Dennis, born in 1966 in Newark, New Jersey, grew up in a large family in public housing, dropping out of school early and descending into crime. By age 14, he committed 3 rapes in 1981, leading to a 10-year prison sentence where he was deemed a model inmate, studying baking and Bible groups. Released on parole in October 1991 at 25, he worked as a bakery porter and at Burger King, showing no red flags to his parole officer, who later expressed being surprised and shocked by the revelations. The spree unfolded swiftly. On December 12, 1991, Dennis attacked 26-year-old Zelda Bailey, who survived. 4 days later, he raped and strangled 41-year-old Robin Carter to death in Newark, her body found that day. In February 1992, he abducted 30-year-old Elizabeth Klenner, raping and bludgeoning her fatally with a blunt object before dumping her in an abandoned house. Days later, he stabbed 30-year-old Stephanie Alston to death, leaving her body nearby. On February 22, 23-year-old Khadijah Harris escaped his knife attack. In April, he stabbed a 32-year-old woman in the neck, who survived, then raped and stabbed 16-year-old Jamila Jones, hurling her body off a pedestrian overpass. He also killed 14-year-old Shakia Hedgespeth. her body discovered amid the cluster. Investigators, facing mounting bodies along the Garden State Parkway, formed a task force with local police, state authorities, and the FBI. Crime scenes revealed brutal patterns: strangulation marks, stab wounds, and signs of sexual assault. Dennis was arrested at his East Orange home on April 12, 1992, after tips and evidence linked him. He confessed fully, detailing the abductions of black strangers. Charged with 35 felonies including murder and rape, he pleaded not guilty initially, but guilty to 13 counts on February 27, 1993, avoiding death row. At sentencing in Essex County Superior Court, the 26-year-old Dennis stood impassive, his lawyer noting schizophrenia and requesting psychiatric evaluation. He received 2 consecutive life terms, plus 3 concurrent, eligible for parole after 60 years. The case ignited moral panic in Newark and East Orange, with women urged to avoid solitude and patrols intensified. A public meeting drew over 250 skeptical residents questioning the swift arrest. His parole officer's shock highlighted flaws in monitoring, though officials insisted his file was 100% nothing missing. No international outcry emerged, but it amplified U.S. serial killer fears. From this harrowing case, key lessons emerge: stay alert in familiar areas as predators exploit routine paths. Report unusual encounters immediately to aid swift task forces, and advocate for robust parole oversight to catch early warning signs before escalation. Ultimately, Dennis's rampage reminds us that early release without flawless vigilance can unleash hidden horrors, urging society to balance rehabilitation with unyielding public safety. Number 10. Anthony Balaam. In the mid-1000s, 990s, a wave of fear swept through Trenton, New Jersey. Women disappeared, their bodies later found in vacant lots and rundown hotels. The killer lived among them, unnoticed. Anthony Balaam, born July 19, 1965, was a soft-spoken man with a quiet demeanor that concealed his violent urges. Neighbors described him as polite, calm, and almost invisible in the community. Behind closed doors, however, Balaam struggled with crack addiction and an escalating darkness. Detectives would later call him one of the calmest and coolest murderers I've encountered. Between 1994 and 1996, Balaam embarked on a killing spree that earned him the name the Trenton Strangler. His pattern was calculated. He cruised Trenton streets, within blocks of his home, searching for sex workers. He lured them with crack cocaine, then turned violent. Each encounter ended the same way: rape, followed by strangulation. On October 24, 1994, 41-year-old Karen Denise Patterson became his first known victim. 5 months later, on March 19, 1995, he killed 29-year-old Valentina Kyler. Just weeks later, on April 10, 1995, 27-year-old Connie Hayward was found strangled inside a dilapidated hotel. Balaam temporarily left New Jersey for Detroit, but by July 1996, he returned, resuming his attacks. On July 29, 1996, the body of 37-year-old Deborah Ann Walker was discovered by a neighbor in a vacant lot. The case turned when a woman survived a February 1996 assault, escaping before Balaam could strangle her. She provided a detailed description, and investigators secured DNA from 2 murders that matched Balaam. On August 8, 1996, police arrested him at his Trenton home. Calmly, he admitted responsibility, telling detectives about the rage and power he felt while slowly strangling the women. His trial lasted nearly 5 years. DNA evidence, survivor testimony, and his own confession sealed the verdict. On June 1, 2001, a jury found him guilty of 4 murders and 4 aggravated sexual assaults. Although prosecutors sought the death penalty, the jury ruled against it. On January 26, 2001, Balaam was sentenced to life in prison with no parole eligibility until 2116. In court, he sat expressionless, listening as the judge condemned his crimes as deliberate acts of cruelty. The community, shaken by years of fear, expressed both relief and outrage. Local residents were horrified that someone described as polite and ordinary could commit such brutality. "It's hard to believe he lived right here, among us," one neighbor said. The nickname, Trenton Strangler, became a lasting scar on the city's memory. From this tragedy, lessons remain urgent. Predators often appear unassuming, hiding behind normalcy, trust instincts when situations feel unsafe. For vulnerable individuals, particularly those struggling with addiction, accepting risky exchanges can escalate into violence, and communities must remain vigilant, reporting suspicious behavior before it escalates into tragedy. Today, Anthony Balaam sits in New Jersey State Prison, a reminder of the hidden dangers lurking behind quiet facades. His story underscores a chilling truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous individuals are the ones no one notices until it is too late. New Jersey's darkest crimes remind us that evil doesn't always wear a warning sign. It hides in quiet neighbors, trusted friends, and even the faces of family. Each case we uncovered tonight reveals not just brutality, but the fragile line between safety and tragedy. And yet, for every story of horror there is also a chance to learn, to stay vigilant, and to refuse silence. But these are just a fraction of the cases buried in America's true crime history. What other stories remain untold? Which names still haunt police files, waiting for answers? If you don't want to miss the next chapter of Justice Reversed, make sure you hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you'll be the first to uncover the hidden truths in our upcoming investigations.